Once you finish recording your podcast episode, you think you are done. It is a wrap. It is good to go. But then comes in the marketing. So today we're going to go over the best strategies to properly market your podcast on social media by posting less.
Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? Thank you so much for being here. I am Chris, and I am from the original Chris and Christine Show podcast. You know, you can find out every single thing about that show on a website, which I built. Yeah, check that out if you want to at chrisandchristineshow.com. Link to it in the show notes of this very episode. You can scroll on down, and there it is. Hey, do you even read show notes? Do you even look at show notes? I know a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on creating show notes, and I put a little bit into it too, but I always kind of wonder who actually reads the show notes. I don't really when it comes to shows that I listen to, only if they mention some tool or some website or something cool. Hopefully there's a link to it in the show notes, and anything else they put in there, I usually don't look at. I was kind of wondering that the other day, like how many shows that I subscribe to that I actually look at show notes. But enough about me. How are you doing? How is your podcast coming along? Do you have a podcast? Is it bringing you all the wonderful, amazing things that you always wanted out of your podcast? Hey, are you famous yet? I know that was your goal, to become famous with your podcast, and you have to surely by now be on the billboard of all the billboards in your city because you're so amazing, right? Hey, I know podcasting is not super easy and it's not an instant overnight success. It does take time. It does take a lot of time to put in the work and effort to, build a show and make it somewhat successful, even mega successful. So I always kind of wonder, how do some of these shows or some of these people, like how are they so much more popular than you are with your own podcast? And that's where you got to stop yourself right there. You should never, ever compare your show directly to another person's podcast or show or YouTube channel or any of those things. Do not compare yourself to them. Compare yourself to your own self. I know it's hard when you look at your stats and you're wondering, like, why am I not getting as many downloads as that show or YouTube views on your show compared to their show? And you always go down this comparison things. There's a lot of things that you may not be realizing that they have done that you have never done. Like maybe they have been in the business of doing their show for many, many, many years. Maybe they've already had a built-in audience that they brought to their show in the first place. But for the rest of us mere mortal podcast regular people, we don't have a massive audience of people we can bring into our show before we start our show. So most of us start with basically zero. Maybe your friends and family. Maybe you tell them, maybe a coworker or something. You tell them, hey, I've got a podcast. Maybe you can check it out. And if it's something they're interested in, maybe they'll stick around for more than just one episode. But let's not get carried away here. Let's make sure that our podcast is actually good in the first place. Now, one way you can do that is actually have somebody that you do not know that's potentially your target audience give a listen to your show, and you tell them, hey, give me honest feedback. I want the truth. If it's bad, let me know. If it's good, let me know. If there's areas you think I can work on or cut or add, please let me know. Give me your absolute honest feedback. You need to ask a few different people those things about your podcast, assuming they will actually listen to your podcast. That's always a tricky part, getting somebody to physically press play on the podcast in the first place. Assuming that they do, you should always get some kind of review back from them. And that will help you craft a better show. Don't always assume that the thing you made and you think is great, don't always assume that it's perfect. Your podcast is not a statue. You can always evolve and change it any way you want down the line. If something is working for you now or not working for you, you can always adjust and change. You do not always have to do an interview show, and you do not always have to do a solo show, and you do not always have to do a group chat co-hosted type of show. You can do anything you want, any way you want. It's your show. You are the captain of your podcast ship. Okay, so let's just assume you got a decent show on your hands. You got some actual honest feedback back on the show, and people seem to like it, and they say this is good stuff. Great. So the second part of creating any podcast is getting the podcast out to the masses, aka marketing your podcast. Now, marketing is a tricky thing because a lot of the podcasters that I have seen, they either spend a lot of time focusing on creating the podcast, making it sound great, great content, delivering amazing value. That stuff's great. And then the other part of podcasters seem to focus a lot on marketing, more about marketing the podcast rather than creating a good podcast. You should always have something amazing to market before you go try to market something. Like you wouldn't sell something that was half-baked out to the customer. And with marketing, you're essentially selling your podcast out to the masses to attract an audience, new listeners, current listeners. Listener downloads essentially is the currency for your podcast, and that's what you're trying to get. So when it comes to marketing a podcast as an independent hobby podcaster like us, our biggest resource to use for marketing is got to be social media. But what is the best strategy to market a podcast using social media? So today I'm bringing on Katie Brinkley. Katie is revolutionizing social media marketing with her less is more approach. With over 19 years of experience, Katie has developed a unique 4-post strategy that helps clients achieve more growth while posting less because we don't have time to be posting all day long. So how do we use social media correctly to help promote our podcast and get more listeners? Well, let's ask Katie.
I got into the podcasting world when so many of us were gifted the gift of time in April of 2020. So I launched my podcast then, but it was something that I'd been wanting to do for a while. I actually got involved in the world of audio back in right out of college. I landed my dream job, and I was the post-game reporter for the Broncos and the Avalanche and the Rockies here in Denver. So audio has always been near and dear to me. I wanted to launch a podcast. I just didn't. I was under the impression that you needed to have all these things to really launch a podcast. And really what I just needed was to start doing it. And so April of 2020, I started, and here we are. I've got almost 300 episodes under my belt now with my show.
Nice. 300 episodes.
I'm getting there. Yeah, close.
Since 2020, you must have done like double up on a weekly or maybe is a daily show or?
Oh my gosh, no. I did have a daily show for a little bit, and then I was like, man, I'm crazy. So what I up until 2023, so for 2 years, it was weekly. And then in 2023, I shifted to twice a week. So every Tuesday, my podcast comes out, and it's a guest interview. And then every Thursday is a solo episode. I call them my quick casts, and they're around 10-ish minutes long.
Oh, I think that's actually a good time frame. I'm trying to work on those myself, and I throw out a little bonus episode that's 5-ish minutes, things like that. And I know guest interviews can run a little long. I did an episode a little while ago about doing solo episodes and the benefit of doing solo episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen a benefit in your shows from doing the solos versus the interviews?
Absolutely. I think that having the solo episodes, like it for me, I mean, my show's on marketing, and it's hard to listen to that much marketing, I would imagine. I sure love it, but my audience are not marketers. They're entrepreneurs who know they need to learn the different marketing in order to grow their business. And so how many different marketing episodes can they listen to every week? Well, that's where, for me, I learned that my audience had really grown to know, like, and trust me and the people that I was interviewing, and they liked the interviews, but they wanted more Katie. And I wasn't holding the microphone long enough as in these guest interviews because I was just interviewing other people on their expertise. And I found, well, I know a lot. Why don't I just share my thoughts on this? And that's where those quick cast episodes came in, and it really revitalized my listenership, my downloads. They're short. Everyone has like 10 minutes. So my listen through rates went up. And then I was showcasing, this is why you can trust me and my guest, because of the people I'm bringing on. They might not be like, okay, I don't really know who this person is, but oh, well, wait, I've already heard Katie. She's talked about, what she does with Facebook ads. Now she's talking to somebody else that she really admires. Well, I need to listen to this episode then.
Right, because the one common thread across your entire podcast, anybody's podcast, is the host.
Yeah,
the host stays the same. The guests may come and go all day long, but as long as they come to see you or hear you, and they trust you, and they know, like, and trust you. So when it comes to marketing, say, a podcast, especially from like a hobbyist side of things, like an independent show, we don't have these massive budgets because that's all we ever hear about. Is like, oh, they have a big audience because they've got $1 million marketing budget. They can advertise on the Super Bowl. They can do that stuff. We can't do that. So as an independent hobbyist, where do we start with marketing?
Well, I think one of the biggest things to keep in mind is, and I know this is probably going to sound crazy because I'm a social media agency owner, but nobody goes to social media to listen to your podcast.
What? You're trying to tell me that when I put my podcast on social media, nobody's looking for it there?
No, well, they might be happy that you popped up into their feed, but they're going on social media to kill time. And they're not going to listen to a podcast. They're going to go open up Spotify or Good Pods or, whatever their favorite podcast player is if they want to listen to a podcast. They're going on social media to kill time. This is where you have to make sure you're not just posting, hey, new episode or, new podcast, whatever it is that you are posting on there. You're actually giving people value and making them problem aware, because most of the people don't even realize they have a problem that you have the answer to in your latest episode. They're on there, again, just to kill time.
Yeah, it's basically a big... I look at social media and I guess my perspective for social media is that use it to maybe build community, kill time. It's especially if you're flicking through like a lot of those quick reels or TikTok videos where it's just these quick little videos and you're just flicking through them. Eventually it gets kind of mind numbing. I'm just like not even really paying attention, just getting like kind of numb to it all. And I know that it's a big push to get everything in the short form video content out there, get as much as possible out there. But you have a different approach when it comes to posting things on social media. Yeah.
And like I said, it's not, I don't think you need to be on social media so much. And I know it sounds a little counterintuitive from somebody that owns a social media agency, but there's so much white noise out there. There's so many, like you just said, you're on there just to kill some time, and you have less than 3 seconds to get people's attention now. And how do you get someone to stop their scroll? And well, it's by creating content that people are looking for. Man, I want to see this person in my post, in my feed. I want to see what they have to say. This person always has great information. Of course, I want to stop my scroll. So this is where it really is important to go in with intention behind every single post and say, okay, well, what is my goal here? Do I want people to listen to my episode? Do I want people to sign up for my training? Do I want people to book a consultation call with me? What do I want them to just buy to buy my, $2, lead mag, whatever. I don't know what your goal is, but you need to know what your goal is. And you can use your podcast to help promote that end goal. That's really going to help scale your business.
Well, that's the thing, is that you have to really figure out, even as an independent hobby podcaster, I think the goal at that point would probably be get more listeners to the show. Yeah. That'd be like the big goal. So if your goal is to get more listeners to the show, how can you leverage social media to make that happen?
So I have a question for you here, Chris. Which social media platforms? I'm looking at your website right now,
Oh, okay.
for Podtastic Audio, and I see you have LinkedIn and you have Instagram on there, and I guess which social media platforms, one, do you use for your business and the show here, and two, which ones, it's you're in the line at Starbucks. It looked like there was no line, and sure enough, you turn the corner. There's about 4 cars in front of you. You already have your phone open to pay on the app. Which social media platform are you opening up to kill time with?
Well, I think it depends on which one alerted me first because I have the alerts come to my phone. So if Instagram is alerting me, I'll probably check out the alert. I kind of go to whatever alerts me, if that makes sense. So, or if it's Twitter X that alerts me, I'll go to that. And then if nothing alerts me at all, like you're saying, it's just a clean slate on all the apps, which one would I go to? Let me think. I guess it kind of depends on which one I probably get the most interaction on. And I think for me, it's either X, Twitter, or now it's Threads. Threads has been actually pretty good for me too. That's a tough call, really.
So, well, and I guess this is where too, like, which one are you on? Because you just enjoy the people on it. Not necessarily when, hey, I got a notification, someone responded to me, but you don't need to create content. You just are on there to hang out, kill some time. You don't have much time. You're just, I already had my app open.
Yeah. So I probably scroll through Instagram, I think a lot. But cool. I think with the Instagram thing too is I keep my phone on silent most of the time. So unless I have it turned on, I guess you touch the screen on Instagram where it turns on the volume where you can hear whatever they're playing and stuff. For the most part, unless it's like a reel to where they're saying something, even with captions on, I may want to hear what they're saying, but not always, it depends. And then I'll have it on to listen to what they're doing. A lot of the times, there are certain posts that I do see. There's this one, I don't know if you may have seen it or not, but there's a lady in San Diego. She works for one of the news agencies in San Diego here, and she always posts the same thing or the same style of content, which is always fascinating to me. And that's like real estate market stuff, especially here in San Diego and the renting, crisis and the prices for this and that and all that stuff. She always posts that stuff on her Instagram. And every time I see her face pop up, I stop and check her out and check out what she's talking about. It's usually like a top 10 place to live or the worst place to live or the highest rents in different cities and all that kind of stuff. It's always good stuff. And I always find it very fascinating. So when I see her pop up, I'm like, oh, let me see what she's talking about. Let me unmute my phone and listen to her, Well,
and I'm glad you actually even said that. And I promise I'll get back to the original question you asked. But I mean, I also have my phone on silent. And this is actually a great segue. But how many of us have our phone or our volume on silent? And so when we open up these apps, we see that there's movement. We see that there's a video happening, but we don't have our sound on, so we just keep on scrolling. And this is where it's extremely important, especially if Instagram is one of your main platforms. Not everyone consumes content the same way. You turn your volume on for that San Diego realtor, Chris, but you might be scrolling right past other really relevant information, good content, but you have your sound off. And I have my sound off most of the time. This is why yours truly is not on TikTok. Is there a huge opportunity for people on TikTok right now, especially, like for podcasting? And if you're creating video, you love video, yeah, there's a huge opportunity. But I'm not on TikTok because most of the time I have my sound off. And if I do have the sound on, I have a 6 and a 9-year-old, and the second that they hear some sort of sound come from my phone, they're like, what are you doing? What are you watching? Can I see? I'm like, oh, no, I'm not doing anything on social media. So this is where having a variety of content and posting on one or two platforms a variety of ways is extremely important. If you're only posting reels on Instagram, you're missing out on the people that enjoy a good old-fashioned carousel post, or the people that like seeing just one photo in the feed, the people that enjoy joining a live conversation. You're missing out on all those people. And so this is where I see a lot of podcasters making the mistake of, oh, well, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the video for my podcast, or I'm going to go ahead and create an audiogram. And that's all that they do, because it's showing one type of content over and over and over. And yeah, you might hit those people, but a lot of people have the sound off and they just scroll right on past you, and you're never going to get the engagement.
So on the note of having, let's assume someone's got their phone on. Let's assume they got their volume on their phone there, and they're on, say, Reels and Instagram or Stories or whatever it is. I guess Reels now, yeah. And they, come across your post that you created. How quick, or what should you have in the very first second of the reel to grab their attention?
You.
What do you mean by you? Like, you be on the thing? Like, you be the thing?
Yeah. I mean, Chris, you're a great guy. But if you're on my show and I have a clip of you saying something brilliant, it might be really, really smart, but they don't know who you are. Right?
Right.
My audience doesn't know who you are. They're there for me. So how can I entice my audience to listen to what you have to say? I have to say a hook that allows them to know, like, and trust you instantly, so that I can transfer over to whatever brilliance you say.
Oh, well, thank you for calling me brilliant. I appreciate that. But I guess maybe the thing is that the attention span for these social media like platforms and stuff is so quick and so short, because we're constantly like flicking the phone to the next thing with your thumb, just flicking it up, that, I mean, you have to catch them within maybe a second or less.
Yeah, and I think that this is where really knowing who your ideal listener, who your ideal client, who your ideal customer is it's invaluable. If you know who they are, my friend, so my friend Red calls it your invisible best friend. And I know my best friend Chelsea. She loves to garden. She's a nurse. She has 2 small children. She loves, some good 2000s hip hop. She loves being outdoors. She loves Michigan football. Man, I know a lot about Chelsea. I know how old she is. I know when her birthday is. I know what her husband does. That's what you need to think of when it comes to who's listening to you or who your ideal client is, who's buying from you. You need to know them inside and out.
It can't be like, I'm doing a show for everybody. Everybody can listen to my show because I want to put a big net out to the entire world. I want to capture everybody to listen to my show.
I want everyone to listen to my show too. However, I know that when I show up on social media, I have to talk to that one person. I know who I'm talking to on Instagram, and I know who I'm talking to LinkedIn, and they are 2 very different people. However, so on Instagram, 70, I think, I just checked this morning, at 76% of my audience on Instagram are females between the ages of 35 and 44. 76%. That does mean that there's 24% dudes, maybe, that follow me, that are in different age ranges. But I know the age range and gender of my audience on Instagram. Now, over on LinkedIn, it's very different. Most of the people that follow me there have the title CEO, CXO, CIO, CTO. They work at companies that have at least 10,000 employees. I know who's following me over on LinkedIn. Do you think that their goals between the people that follow me on Instagram and the people that follow me on LinkedIn are a little different? Yeah. And I know that when I post a picture of me and my daughters on Instagram, it does much better than if I posted a picture of me and my daughters over on LinkedIn. Not to say that they don't like my daughter, but the way that I can tell the narrative and can tell the story is very different between those 2 platforms. And so it's extremely important to know who it is that you're talking to, so you can speak directly to that person and say, hey, mom that is, trying to be a mom and be an entrepreneur and grow her business and do all the things, listen to this episode. Does it feel like you're doing all the things and you're going in a million different directions? I actually sit down with guest so-and-so on this week's episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing, and we talk about the top 10 tips to help you delegate your day so you never get overwhelmed.
So it sounds like you presented the problem to the specific person, and then you say, in this episode, we have the answer.
Correct.
Okay, so that's kind of the formula for most social media that you should be posting for your show?
So I have a 4-post framework, and the 4-post strategy I call the awareness to action strategy, and it's utilizing these platforms. And that's why I asked you earlier, which platforms, one, you enjoyed being on, and two, which ones you feel like you get the most engagement from. Because I don't think you need to be on every single platform. And if you're doing the 4-post strategy, you can talk to each person on these platforms where you're going to get the most reach and the most engagement and the most impressions. And so the very first post is you have to make people problem aware. So for example, if it's Instagram, making people aware that they are overwhelmed. So maybe I post a reel. It has nothing to do with the podcast, a clip, nothing. But I can just do a picture of me working, let's say, and on this, the text on the screen I'm just going off of this overwhelmed delegation thing. I don't have an episode on that. Maybe I should have one. But
there you go. Ideas happening right now.
But let's say I say on the screen, I can say these 3 tools helped eliminate 5 hours of my work week, and I can just name off 3 tools that I use that have helped me eliminate, some of my work. Like, oh my gosh, I was spending 5 hours a week editing my podcast and creating the show notes and doing this and doing this. These 3 tools changed everything. I've made people aware that, hey, there's a tool out there that will save you time. Maybe over on LinkedIn, because I said that was my other platform, I do a LinkedIn poll. And on the LinkedIn poll, I can say, how many hours a week, if you have a podcast, how many hours a week would you say you spend with the production? And then I could just do like 1 hour, 2 hour, 5 hours, whatever. Just again, making people problem aware. I've told them nothing about the podcast episode. They don't even know that there's an episode. I just made them problem aware.
Yeah, it's about getting, I guess, the community to kind of like think of the problem that you could present to them, and then hopefully, I mean, in theory, I would think playing the long game here is that maybe they would hope that you have the solution to the problem, and that they follow you to the solution.
Exactly.
That's how it is. Now, when it comes to social media, I hear a couple things. One thing I have heard about when they post to social media is that if you have a podcast, like any podcasters out there, that you should only post new episode stuff, maybe 1% of all the other stuff you post.
So I talk about my podcast every week. I just use the 4-post strategy for it. So again, I'm just using examples here, but like for LinkedIn today, I released an article that I wrote about what the problem was. So this week's episode, we talked about the book Profit First in it. And I introduced what Profit First, way of finances is, how my guest is doing it for his business, how I do it for mine, 3 actionable takeaways of Profit First. And by the way, I have an entire podcast episode on it if you click here.
Okay. So it's kind of getting them hooked up, like a bite-sized bites of it. And you want the full meal, the full thing. Come join me in the podcast itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Fantastic. I know that some apps like LinkedIn let you put links in the post, and Instagram not so much. So when you're on Instagram, you're trying to post something, you're trying to get people to go to the show. How do you do it with an Instagram post?
Yeah, so for Instagram, I love asking people just to comment something. So, for example, like I just recently did a reel, and in the reel, I say, comment AOC below, and there's a bunch of people that have commented AOC, and then it allows me to know, okay, these X amount of people have given the world public view that they've said, Katie, you can slide into my DMs, and I am ready and waiting with open arms. And now I have a one-on-one conversation with my actual listener.
That's great. That's fantastic.
In the DMs. And I can say, okay, these X amount of people want to know more. They want to listen to the show. Here's the link. And I can follow up with them 3 days later and say, hey, what'd you think? What was your biggest takeaway?
That's great. It's always good if you have a chance to have a conversation with somebody who actually listens to your show. I always like to say, like, what did you take away? What can be changed? What did you like? What did you dislike? I mean, if you can, I know sometimes it's hard as a content creator to have those conversations with people because you want everybody to just like it.
Yeah.
They always say like, oh, please review my show. Let me know what you think. Hey, I said, are you sure? I mean, because I'll give you a review if you're sure. And then I review it and it's hot garbage. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's not, And then they get mad at me. So then I'm like, well, I guess I'm not going to review shows anymore because people don't take it very well. And I just realized nobody wants to hear the negative. They just want to hear it's fantastic. Mom says it's great and it's amazing and we all love it. That's all they want to hear. So I think when people post things on social media and they'll post their show, they'll post their things, they'll just hear crickets and nothing happening. I mean, how do you tell somebody that maybe you're not posting, maybe not correctly, or maybe you're just posting too much of the wrong things?
I think one of the biggest things is with social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Instagram actually even more so. Think of your Instagram as a kind of a little mini website. Any post that someone clicks on should help them navigate through the customer journey just the exact same way that your website does. If someone clicks on, this link from your homepage and goes to your blog and the blog links to the podcast, we want to make sure that podcast doesn't take them down a rabbit hole, that they have a way of getting back to contacting us. So every single post needs to be able to take your ideal client through that customer journey. I tell people that the most important metric to track, especially on Instagram, is profile views, because that's where people are going to learn more about you, what you do, maybe clicking on your website, maybe going through some of your past posts. They're learning more about you. Profile views is a very underrated metric. And if you have your profile set up the right way, any post that they click on is going to take them to a way of wanting to learn more from you and deciding that's my person. That's who I want to listen to. That's the show I want to be a part of. That's the community I want to be a part of, whatever.
Right. Yeah, of course. You want to make sure that, it's all about know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
If they know, like, and trust you, they're going to do business with you. And even if your business is getting people to listen to your podcast, which in a form, I guess, any podcast really in the basic form of it all is like a business, small business really. And the currency is downloads. So you kind of want to get people to get over there to get them to push play on your show. So, but when it comes to like posting physical content on all these social media platforms, I mean, I know that like a lot of people just only post new episode out, episode 10 is out, here it is,
Yeah.
blah, 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 whatever. Even if they say in the episode, okay, we talked to so-and-so, and we're talking about these 3 things or whatever. But even with all that, shouldn't they also post other things?
Yeah, I think that with posting on social media, that your story, so the 4-post strategy is designed to take people through the customer journey, each different way that they can post different things. So making people prom aware. Then the next post is an elaboration post. This is where you have the opportunity to explain your thought leadership. The next post is a community post, how you overcame this problem also, or how you helped a client overcome this. And then the last post is obviously action, asking people to leave social media and go one step further with you. But this 4-post strategy allows you to post a number of different ways, whether it's video, going live, a picture of you and your daughter, or you and your family, whether it's whatever. It allows you to showcase so many different sides of you, your business, your show, and it's not all the same thing. It's different. It's a different way of thinking about showing up online, and it allows you to. The community post should be your favorite post to do every week because it allows you to show you, and that's what people are. That's what social media was intended for. That's what social media was designed for. Was for connecting and building community.
Right. When it comes to posting, like I've been toying with live streaming and live feed a little bit. I've done a couple of them, recently, kind of toying with them and stuff like that. How powerful is it to do a live stream on like an Instagram?
I think that it's a great way to really show up and show the human side. For me and my show, I love to have. So if you were a guest on my show, I would love to say, hey, so the episode's coming out on, I'm just going to say a random day, June 4th. And on June 3rd, do you have time to pop on a live for 5 minutes? We can just talk a little bit about the show. I can introduce you to my audience a little bit more.
That sounds great because it kind of like, I mean, I know on Instagram, I think in theory, doesn't it like show up on both persons' feeds? Like we're both live together at the same time.
Yep.
So both audiences get to see that we're both live together, or at least on my side's going to say I'm live, your side's going to say you're live. We both click on it and it goes to the same stream, like the live stream. And that way, both in theory, both sides get to see each other. And it's a great way to like, I guess, maybe cross promote, maybe, gather some audience from both sides and stuff and kind of help build your pool.
Exactly that. Yeah. And it allows you to share an audience. Everyone, you get that front and center spot at the very top of the home feed, because it's next to all the stories at the very, very top if you're going live. And so, I mean, you kind of, Instagram, again, no one's really talking about going live. Everything's short form video, but there's still a power in going live with people. And you can sell, you can say, have a link in there and say, listen to our episode here, or you want to be notified when the episode comes out, click this link and then you can get their email address, whatever. There's a number of ways that you can really grow your show, your listeners. And it's by using these platforms the way they want you to create content. I mean, we always are talking about, our hashtag's still relevant and, the algorithm's out to get me. And well, no, if you're posting the ways that these platforms want you to, you're utilizing all the different tools that they've given you, they're going to put you a little bit higher up in the pecking order.
Well, speaking of higher up, I know that one thing I've struggled with, at least on Instagram myself, is building like I don't say huge audience, but building a healthy audience. Because it seemed very easy to build followers on X, Twitter. And I think that certain platforms, I mean, it's my personal experience, certain platforms seem easier to build on than others. Have you seen that too with your travels with with social media in general?
I think that I'm not on, I'm on X, but not really anymore. I was really into X up until about a year ago. And then, Threads came out and Threads wanted you to be on it. And so if you were active on Threads, and you got a higher rank in the algorithm whenever you actually posted on Instagram. And I mean, there's so many things. And this is where I think it's really important just to diversify yourself enough, but you don't need to be everywhere. And if I post something on X, let's say I post a reel, like a short form video on X, it's not going to perform the way that it would on Instagram. And there's a different culture between Instagram and TikTok. And there's a different culture between TikTok and YouTube Shorts. And this is where you really need to just take that step back and be like, okay, which social platforms do I enjoy being on? And which platforms is my ideal listener, my audience on?
Right. Of course, I think if you're starting out as a newer show, it's kind of hard to really tell. So you decide to get all the platforms, the Facebook group. You decide to do all the things.
Yeah.
Because you throw it out on all the things and thinking that like a net, trying to figure out which one should I focus on more. I mean, I noticed early on, I think in 2020-ish, 2021, is that for me, Twitter seemed to be the place that I got the most engagement and I got the most things, and people my following seemed to grow pretty rapidly over there. I mean, not a massive following, but I mean, it seemed to grow pretty quickly there versus at Instagram, it grew, but it grew to a point where it kind of just tapered and stayed there for a while. And slowly now it's starting to grow up a little more, but it's not the rapid growth that I saw over on Twitter X. And I wonder, if it has anything to do with the algorithm or anything to do with anything. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that, it really comes back to what is your biggest goal? And if it's how many of those people you're like, yeah, okay, I was growing my following, but how many of those people were actually coming were listeners? Were they actually coming and listening to the show? Were they going one step further with you? Were you tracking? Okay, yeah. So I mean, I'll transparently, Instagram is my largest audience. My largest audience, all organic. So proud of the fact that I've grown as much as I have. But man, I just don't get engagement the way that I do over there anymore.
Oh,
And
really?
just not the way that I used to over before. I mean, I used to consider it kind of like, oh, bummer, I only got 150 likes. Man, what I would do just for,
150 likes.
150 likes these days. Yeah, And so this is where, again, but for me, LinkedIn's not killing it. I know that for all the posts that I do over on LinkedIn, people are clicking those links and they're going to listen to my show or they're going to sign up for an audit with me, whatever. They're taking action. So the people that are there, while it's at, I don't know, I think like maybe 5,000, I'm getting less engagement, but the engagement I'm getting is actually turning to the metrics and the KPIs that I know move the needle. It's not just like, oh, they liked it. No. They liked it and they clicked on it to go listen to the podcast episode.
And you follow those links, those clicks?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, otherwise, what's the point?
Right. I got to get on that.
I mean, like, yeah, it's what really, otherwise, I don't know. Maybe because I was never really popular in school, but I mean, it's like, Khalil, that's really great. Like, I am way more invested in my email list than I am on social media. Not, please, if you guys like me, please go follow me on social media. But at the same time, like,
right.
If you really like the stuff that I'm saying right now on today's episode, join my email list. Man, if you're on that email list, I love you. And those people, it's the smallest audience that I have. Like on social media combined, between all the apps, I have around 100,000 followers. My email list is around 3,000.
Wow.
And way smaller, right?
Right.
Way smaller. But I have a 60% open rate.
That's good. Now, what is a good open rate for an email list?
I think it's typically around 19 to 20%.
Okay. Now, I always hear about the email list. Everybody pushes the big email list. Everybody email.
You're not relying on algorithms.
But also, too, like I have like thousands of junk mail that I never open. I've got like probably, if I look at my email right now, probably 20,000 emails unopened. But the most of them are junk. I just ignore them or whatever. I've gotten too lazy to clean them up now at this point. So with email, I always kind of thought that, because I've gotten email list stuff too, and either I just ignore them or don't open them and things like that. How powerful is having an email list if half the people don't even open them?
Well, this is where you have to write really good emails. And for me, I know, like I was saying before, I'm invested in my email list. Like people, I don't know, my follower count goes up and down on social media every single day. And I'm just kind of like, meh, okay. But on email, that last email, it had only a 40% open rate. But of that 40%, the click-through rate was this. Okay, so I know this is really good. Maybe I should try resending it. And I don't think enough people do try resending emails. Maybe it just wasn't the right time of day. Maybe they're on vacation. If you have a really good email that had an okay open rate, but great click-through rate or whatever goal you had, send it again to the people that didn't open it.
You can do that? You can see who, I mean, I guess it depends who your email client is, but you can see who didn't open it and who did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's I use ActiveCampaign, and I can go right in and hit duplicate and, send it again to people who did not open it.
Oh.
Or to people that did open it if I wanted to, but...
Interesting. That's an interesting strategy. I never thought about that. Now, when it comes to email campaigns, what is a good what do you think is the best day of the week to send emails out like this?
Oh man, social and podcasting and content's definitely my bread and butter, but there's so much that goes into email that I do not claim to be an expert. I send my emails on Thursday afternoons. I know like one person, she sends it on Sunday mornings. It's I don't know the best day or time to send it. I just know that I send mine after lunch on Thursdays because I want my content to just be something where they can kind of be sit back and relax. My emails are long. They're newsletter style, so it's people are opening them. I want them to be able to have the time to invest in it. And if they're doing it on a Monday morning, it's going to get thrown right in the trash.
Yeah, there's so many other things going on. So I would think maybe a time of day or a day where there's not a lot of email coming into their inbox. But then again, on the other side of it too, if you're on vacation on a Sunday or something, you're checking email, probably not. Maybe you are, I don't know. But I just got to think it's kind of one of those weird things. The same thing with social media too. People always say, oh, you got to post this day, this time, that time. So on social media posting, what are your best strategies for that time of day to post?
Yeah, I think that this is where, again, it comes back to knowing who it is that you're talking to. If you know that, hey, let's say I'm only on Instagram or whatever, and I have a mom podcast about delegating work-life balance. Let's say that's my show. Well, when does your client have downtime? It might actually be on the weekend. It could be Sunday night because the kids are done with all their things. School, all the stuff for school is done, and you're sitting down, you're relaxing. And Sunday night might be a really good time to send your email, to do your post. You have to know who it is that you're talking to and be looking at your insights and your metrics regularly because they change.
Wow. Yeah, that is true. And for me, I've always thinking like time zones because I'm on the West Coast and I have an audience in Europe. And yet I see these things come across my feed or messages and things like that when I wake up in the morning here.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it or I get home late at night and I'm posting something and I get a quick response back on it, like on a thread or something. I get a response back. Here it is 3 a.m. my time, but it's probably, whatever, noon there or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So always kind of be aware of different time zones. Now, does it become a factor when you are posting social media stuff to think about the time zones?
Not too much. I mean, I know where most of my audience is, and the majority of my audience is here in Colorado. But then second place is New York, followed by Sacramento. So really, that's 4 hours I got to try and work with. So I like my email. I just keep going back to email, probably because I just sent it out before we hopped on the call here. But my email is scheduled to send Thursdays at 1:00 Mountain Time. That's noon, on the West Coast and 3 on the East Coast. So I mean, it's tricky, but you have to go with where your core following is.
That's where it's so important to figure out who your ideal listener is and follow all the different metrics. I know with podcasting, depending where you host your podcast, a lot of them do show you what part of the world your downloads are coming from. So you can have an idea of like listeners in this country or that country or wherever it is. And I think, should you really cater your posting schedule to the majority? Like say you get the majority in the United States. Most listeners are from the United States. So I should really focus my content and my energy here versus other places and let them figure it out, or what?
Yeah. Short answer. Yeah. It's definitely, in my podcast, it comes out at 8 a.m. Mountain Time. Really, that's 10 o'clock over on the East Coast. But again, looking at my metrics, Denver's where my core audience is. So I have to do what the majority of my audience, wants, what works for them.
What is your thought on time of day of posting the actual releasing the podcast episode? Does it make, I always thought it didn't make a difference because it's time shifted content anyways. Mm-hmm. But do you have any thoughts on that? On what time of the day to post?
I think that the best time to post is during the morning commute time.
Okay.
Because even though so many of us work from home, that I've found with my podcast sticking to around 28 minutes, and releasing when people have already dropped the kids off at school, and they're on their way into the office, then that's the best time for downloads for me and my audience.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, Katie, this has been so wonderful having you on the show today. I do appreciate you stopping by today. Where can everybody find out all about you and all your wonderful stuff?
Yeah, you can connect with me at katiebrinkley.com. And that's the best way to listen to the show, hear my appearances, buy my book, all the things.
All the things. Well, this is so great. Katie, any last words to give to our audience before I let you go here today?
Last words, stop posting so much.
But the kids love it. Come on now. That was fantastic. Thank you, Katie, so much for stopping by today. Your information was so informative, and I learned so much. I mean, who knew that maybe you should try posting only 4 things in your 4-post strategy to get more clients and more downloads. And one thing I did take away from all of our conversations today is that no matter what, you need to be constantly posting something of value to the listener. Posting things that have no value at all really are just mind-numbing, and we don't even pay attention to that stuff. If there's something truly informative that you are posting on your post, something that really is intriguing to the audience, something that when they are scrolling through social media and they see your post, they have to stop on it and say, wow, what is that? Let me dive deeper and see what this is about. And if you want to learn more about Katie Brinkley, all of her information is down in the show notes of this very episode. Thank you once again for listening all the way through to the very end of this podcast episode today. I truly do appreciate you, and I make these shows directly for you. I don't do this to be famous. I only do this to serve you. And I hope you got some amazing value out of today's episode. And if you did, can you please let me know by leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast player? That way I know to keep making these things for you and you keep enjoying them. And until next time, happy podcasting.